What's up, everybody? Welcome to the N.E.R.D. Film and TV podcast. For this week, we're going to be talking about our review of the latest Marvel movie because it feels like that's all we're ever talking about these days, of Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. And I apologize for all the mispronunciations of names and locations that we are about to make. I am here with your co-host, Kayla Smith. How are you doing today, Kayla?
I'm doing great. We've tried really hard to get these names right.
Yeah.
And we're really trying to do our best.
Yeah, and I do want to stick to I don't want to use the American names that they use in the movie. I do want to do my best to stick to the actual Chinese names that they try to use. But again, we apologize in advance. We're white people. We can't pronounce names correct sometimes. But let's dive into it. Kayla, you saw it on Friday night, I believe. You saw it in theaters because it's the only way you're able to right now. I'm not at all salty about that, but how did you like the movie?
I'm not even mad that they did this in theaters only because it was such a delightful experience. The casting was really on point. I grew up watching, Jet Li and Jackie Chan movies, and it felt like there were really nice moments where you could tell that they're like offering their love up to that genre of film. And it was a really good story. I liked this a lot more than Black Widow. I rank this a million times higher than Black Widow, or even the Spider-Man trailer that just came out. I ended up enjoying this movie just so much more, and I can't believe I was not more hyped for this movie because it was so good.
Yeah, I think a lot of people aren't looking as crazy at this movie because, were you familiar with this character or any of the characters involved at all prior to this movie, with the exception of, oh my god, what's his name really fast? Oh my gosh,
Wong.
Wong. But I was going for Trevor, for Ben Kingsley's character from Iron Man 3, because he was originally introduced as the Mandarin.
Yeah. Right. And I actually really loved that they brought that up and that they tied him in. It felt like a really nice thing for Marvel viewers. And it's one of those things where if you didn't know about him, it's still funny and he's still a really great addition to the film. But for us, that was a really nice addition. That being said, no, I'm not familiar with Shang-Chi. I am not familiar with his sister, with Michelle Yeoh's character. Any of this kind of world, these characters in this world that they're really integrating, and I'm really excited to see Awkwafina as an archer as the next phase of the MCU goes on and on. I loved this movie so much.
Yeah, this movie is, I think if I was to give a quick review of this movie, it is definitely top half MCU. Don't know if I'd put it in my personal top 5. I don't argue with anyone who does. I could definitely, if someone says this is in their top 5, maybe 1 or 2, I could see why. I could definitely see why. But I would definitely say this movie is a jack of all trade. I don't think it does anything perfect. But like you said, the action I thought was really good. The comedy, not a lot in it. I felt like this one definitely had the least amount of comedy compared to some of the other ones. Probably along the same lines as Black Widow. Black Widow obviously really didn't have as much humor as the other ones. But I know you bring up Awkwafina's character. Now I'm familiar with her as a person. Obviously she's in Crazy Rich Asians. She's got her fame in YouTube. And then if you like her music, maybe you know her for her music. But I do love, obviously her as an actress, and the way she did her character is really good. But I do like, if this movie did one thing really well, obviously it has a good action, has a great villain, by the way, just to put that out there. But the side character of Katie, I actually thought was probably the best side character I've ever seen the MCU do, where you have a human who cannot do anything special. He is just by all means human, and is actually super relatable and useful in the story as a human, while all these people are doing all these crazy side things. And I like really like that. I felt like they actually took a little bit of time and put a little bit more thought for how to utilize her character at the end of the day. And like, I don't know if she's going to be a recurring. I'm assuming she's going to be a recurring character now. They definitely let it that way. I don't know if the character she actually is playing is an original Marvel character. Like, I really, again, I know nothing about these people, which is why I probably did like this movie as much as I do, because I really don't know. But having her in there now, I think she's going to be one to look forward to, and probably one of the best liked human realistic characters of the MCU, which we really don't have that many, that aren't a super scientist or billionaires. She's an actual just basic human, which I just really do appreciate that we actually have one now.
Yeah, I mean, you have to think about the other kind of human counterparts that we've had. So you have Kat Dennings' character and Jane Foster, who are from Thor, and I can't say that I liked Natalie Portman more than I liked Awkwafina in this movie. I think at every step of the way that you can tell that this movie was made with a lot of love and care, that the people who were acting in it were really passionate about what they were doing. You can tell that the way that they wrote it, the way that they directed it, the art direction for it was gorgeous. It was such a pretty movie, and really artistically done. But I'm actually really glad that you brought up Awkwafina's character and just the women in general, because one of my favorite parts about this was that this wasn't, kind of like the Tony Stark show featuring Pepper Potts, where Tony is undeniably his own leading character and he figures everything out on his own and he's already strong and powerful. You really see Simu Liu, who plays Shang-Chi, grow as a result of the people around him. And as a result, everyone around him is so much more fleshed out. Like, I loved Michelle Yeoh's character. I loved the fact that he's constantly surrounded by strong women, but it didn't feel like they're trying to shove down your throat that these women are strong and self-assured and powerful. They just are. Awkwafina just is who she is. Michelle Yeoh is just his aunt, and she knows some really cool crap. His mom was a strong, powerful woman without having to say, hey, look at me, I can kick down a door.
Yeah, I think they really didn't. I don't think they shoved really anything down their throat. Just say it's not even just in regard to women, but obviously, like, this movie has a lot of culture in it. Obviously, you have a ton of Chinese culture in it. It pretty much the majority of the cast is Asian actors. I think every single main character is an Asian actor, with the exception of Ben Kingsley and I kid you not, Razor Fist. They're all Asian actors, and but again, I know, kind of like you said, at no point does this movie feel like it's making a political statement. It's just like, no, this is a movie that takes place in China with obviously Chinese characters, and this is just going to be a great movie that treats them with respect. Also, I don't know if you noticed, this movie went a good 10, 15, I don't know about 20 minutes, but about 10, 15 minutes without saying a word of English. It was all subtitles. Yeah. I don't know if you noticed that, which is, I'm pretty sure, a first for the Marvel Universe. And there's not many blockbusters, with the exception of maybe Planet of the Apes. I think the second or third one, where it was just the gorilla sign languaging for the first half hour. Where I've seen a movie in theaters that actually did, American made, that actually did that. So I did really like this movie for doing that.
Yeah, as far as subtitles are concerned, I think that you're absolutely correct. The only one that I can think of is A Quiet Place, which was really, really brilliantly done as far as being entirely in sign language. And the only other language film that I can think of that is majority subtitles was Parasite, which is 2 or 3 years ago. That one best picture, even though it was a foreign language film, which was completely out of left field.
Well, I wouldn't count that one just strictly because it was a foreign language film. It was, because that is a movie made in a foreign country. But as opposed to, like, Shang-Chi is American made. That was Hollywood produced, not a word of English for, like, the first 20 minutes.
Right, and I think that the only reason, though, that they could do that safely was because Parasite already had such widespread success, and that wasn't an American film. That didn't have the Marvel name behind it.
I don't know about that. I don't think it's related, personally. I mean, I understand, but I don't know if that's related.
I would argue that I think it undoubtedly has to be, because it's, we've already had a lot of conversations on the side about how there are certain movies that just don't get made in America because we don't trust, Americans to want to think that hard, or they want to have a movie that is all action and just kind of fighting your way through it, or kind of these surface level stories without much going on underneath. I know that you've told me about the plot of the original Godzilla, which sounds really incredible, but it would never work in America. So I think that it undoubtedly the result of a foreign language movie entirely in subtitles affecting the United States the way that it did, and the fact that it did win multiple Academy Awards. I think that there has to be a correlation.
See, I don't know. It's maybe, again, it's kind of a separate topic. I'm just trying to remember. Did Parasite even get mass distribution in theaters in America?
Yeah,
and I
believe it did.
I don't mean like, because there's foreign films that play in America all the time, but they're like, select theaters. I'm talking like mass distribution across the United States. Because I'm pretty sure that I don't remember that happening. I remember it being on Hulu or maybe Netflix. It was on one of the two, and that's how I saw it. But I don't recall if it was actually.
Let's see. We'll have to look. We'll have to look at that and then come back to that. I'm gonna have to look into this. We'll have to figure out what kind of distribution they did.
Just looked it up. It only played in 3 theaters in America.
In the United States, really?
That's it. So yeah, no, that movie was not mass distributed. Like, no, I know it won an award, and I couldn't even tell you which one it was.
No, it won so many. Like,
well, what American award did it?
It won Academy Awards outside of foreign films. That's what made it so insane.
One for Academy Awards, Best Picture, Best Director.
Yeah.
Screenplay and foreign and international feature film. Yeah, so it definitely won all those 4. I don't know how much it did for getting that movie.
That's 6.
But anyway,
that's 6.
We're on a side topic. Let's get back to Shang-Chi.
Okay, my point is that we've been asking. There have been a lot of cries for better representation, better storytelling, more empathetic storytelling, and I think that this is the way that it should be done. That if you want to tell a story about, with Chinese characters in a Chinese culture, and going to China, going to Macau, and going to these places, that you can do it without having it be cartoony or stereotypical, and you can still do it and just tell a good story. It's not that, it's like we need these dramatic films about Chinese history. We just want a good story with a diverse cast that makes sense. Just make it make sense and tell me a good story. And I think that they did that really beautifully in this story.
Yeah. Again, it's a really well done Marvel movie. That being said, are a couple nitpicks that I would definitely have to it. Of course, 'cause it's me, and nothing's perfect. And I don't know about you. So Trevor Slattery's character that got introduced about probably halfway through the movie. He's obviously Ben Kingsley's returning character. He was the original Mandarin. For audio listeners, I'm putting up quotes here, from Iron Man 3. So he's playing his exact same character, and he kind of opens, like, when they throw him out into the movie, they kind of say, like, oh, I got kidnapped for pretending to be him, and they were going to murder me. But because I could do an excellent rendition of, I don't know exactly what it was, but he says he could do an excellent rendition of a play that they kept him as like their jester, and he does a weekly show for them, which is, by the way, hilarious. But I have theories, and this is kind of where my little nitpick with this movie ends, and it's pretty much entirely with to Trevor as a character. So I don't know if you noticed, but the father character, who's Tony Lang,
Oh,
Leung.
Tony Leung.
Thank
Leung.
you. His character never says a word to Trevor throughout the entire movie. And I don't know if you noticed that during the ending and the big hurrah in the final act, you saw Trevor kind of twice, and it's little glimpses, and one of them is, him pretending to play dead, which is, kind of a little funny gag. And then other than that, he lets a candle out into the lake in the last scene, and he's gone. And you never see him again. You don't know if he left, you don't know if he's still there. And I have a lot of theories on that character. And I think my nitpick with this movie is that if he was just there for a gag and nothing more, what a waste, personally. Because when they introduce him and he gets to the ending, I thought for sure it was like, is somehow Trevor going to get the 10 rings? And that was his entire goal, was just to actually sneak up, and he made up the entire story, and he was never kidnapped. Because I realized he never actually says a word to him. At no point does he interact with them, with the dad character or anything like that. He only interacts with the protagonist. So
Well, that starts to make me wonder if he's like a figment of the imagination, if we're going to be turning this into some more multiverse stuff that's happening. Like, is he just popping in and out of time? Because there is one point where they talk about kind of the creation of the rings and what they're made up of, and they do like a zoom in, and it literally looks like it looks like the multiverse as it was branching out at the end of Loki. And so I thought that the rings were going to have some effect in that matter, and they didn't pull that in, especially when we find out that Ta Lo has nothing to do with the multiverse. It just exists in the world. You just can't access it. You're not cool enough. Kind of like Wakanda.
Yeah, which poses a lot of questions, by the way. How many universes are inside of a universe now?
Well, they started bringing up the fact that they have hubs all over the world, kind of like Wakanda does. And it was like, what do you mean all over the world? Like, where else? What do you mean there's more technologically advanced countries within the world as we know it? Because that's what happened with Wakanda. So now they're doing it again with Shang-Chi, and I'm okay with it. I really love exploring both of those subworlds within the Earth, but it does beg the question: how much don't we know about the world that we exist and we live in, that we feel like we do, especially after Thanos occurs, because Wakanda's already come to the forefront. Thanos has already snapped half of existence out of the world, and they still play on this idea that the impossible afterwards, you can still say something that sounds impossible and it still feels impossible, and it's not till the end of the movie where Wong shows back up.
Yeah, I don't know, but that's definitely just a little nitpick. Like, he shows up and he really does nothing, and then he just kind of disappears. And that's pretty much my only real, I feel like, thing this movie kind of dropped the ball on.
I want to bring up specifically his sister for a second, because we talked about this yesterday or something, and I know you brought up the post-credit scene with her. At the end of the movie, he talks about the fact that his sister is planning on shutting down their dad's base of operations. And then we get this post-credit scene where she's packing up her bedroom, but she's clearly turned it into like her new base of operations for maybe her fighting ring, maybe. But you kind of had this idea that you thought that it was more sinister than that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the way that scene does, it's obviously, it starts off with something a little bit, not mischievous or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But she sits down on her throne, which is a striking image, like her father was. It zooms out, just like the people training, and then it immediately says the 10 rings will return. And at that point, now I know the 10 rings are usually referring to the object, but the entire movie, whenever they talk about the 10 rings, for the most part, they're not talking about the object. The 10 rings, they were talking about the army. So the second the screen goes black and it says 10 rings will return, I assume that is this movie's way of saying, hey, that sister character is evil and she's now starting her own army for whatever reason. You know, we really don't know because we really didn't pay that. It really didn't pay that much attention to her in the movie.
Well, and if we want to look at potentially the way that the first phase of the MCU went, I wouldn't necessarily be surprised, and I would be okay with her kind of being this phase's kind of new Loki, where this is the same kind of brother-sister play that was happening, or sibling rivalry, sibling play that's happening with Thor and Loki, and now with Sean and his sister. And I would be more than okay with seeing that kind of similar character growth and development of either I want to do good and I don't know how because I've been so hurt by the world. I mean, her brother left her even though he didn't necessarily intend to leave her. She was raised by a psychopath. But
yeah,
I would be okay with seeing a really, really strong female antagonist grow out of this phase and kind of take over from Loki's spot, since we're seeing a different thing happen for him now. He's moving past this and onto something different.
Yeah, it's funny. At this point in the MCU, we had a couple villains, and then at that point in time, you know, in the first phase, like, we didn't know Loki was coming back. Mm-mm. Like, I don't think most people realized Loki was going to be a villain again in the Avengers. You know, we didn't really think that. And like, I know you're bringing up that point, like, is she going to be like a new kind of Loki, like a second villain kind of thing? And I kind of sit down and go, I don't know if you've like realized there's so much going on in the MCU all at the same time. So like, a lot of focus is on the multiverse stuff. And then obviously you have now the 10 Rings army, and now the object, that's kind of a problem. That's their own separate thing. And then you have everything going on in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. You know, I feel like they're in their own world. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, what the heck is now Doctor Strange and Spider-Man doing? It's all of this stuff. And you gotta wonder how they're gonna balance all of this. At this point, it's like we're just introducing more and more and more. And what is Eternals gonna bring at this point now?
I am really glad that we're kind of we're bringing up trailers here, if we don't mind kind of switching gears a little bit. I saw the Eternals trailer before Shang-Chi, and I thought that the movie looked really good. And then obviously in between our last episode and this episode, we've had the Spider-Man trailer drop. And I want to talk about this because I did not like the Spider-Man trailer. I have said it. I will say it. And
you feel like you're alone on that one.
I don't care. But also, you know, the Eternals trailer produced the first full-fledged trailer we saw for them, and you know, we've talked about this before, so we won't talk about this too much, but what a cop-out to say, well, we weren't supposed to interfere in Thanos. But then you have Doctor Strange, who is a literal surgeon. He is a very intelligent human being. And you get fucking Spider-Man coming to you. He's a teenager. He doesn't know jack. He doesn't know anything. And he goes, my life is hard. Can people just forget that I'm Spider-Man? And Doctor Strange, who has the actual time stone, who is the protector of time and knows how badly that could go, says, sure, why not? That's insane. That is literally insane. And if that is the driving force between what moves this movie, I just feel like that's such a cop-out. I would have preferred anything else, I think, because I just don't buy that he would do that, because he tries so hard to protect the timeline that I don't see him doing something like that, despite how much he likes to mess around with the rules.
You know, I have no idea. Only because it's a trailer, and Marvel has duped us multiple times, you know, in the trailers before. I can see your point. In fact, I kind of agree when you think about it. Like, and I think there's actually, and I'm sure you've seen the memes. There's a lot of memes with that exact point of view as well going around, of people joking, like, Doctor Strange being like, "Oh yeah, I won't do anything wrong," and then he like winks at the camera, which is like really funny. So again, I don't really know. Maybe we'll see the movie, and maybe there is a reason for it. Maybe he has a motive. I don't know if you've been following What If at all, but they just had an episode on Doctor Strange, and diving into his character a little bit more, and he's been known to not be a great human being, before. Like him as a character prior to him becoming Doctor Strange, like he was a very narcissistic character, He could be doing this for different reasons. Not saying we're going to have a repeat of what happened in the What If episode. I won't spoil it for you if you haven't seen it yet. But yeah, I guess I'm holding my judgment until I see the movie, because I also thought Hulk was going to be an Infinity War, and, well, he wasn't. So.
Okay, yeah. I mean, and I'm really happy. I'm really happy that we got to see more of Mark Ruffalo's Hulk. I'm really happy, despite my feelings about my Captain Marvel, which was not important for today. That's a different conversation and a different day. So
Wait a minute. You actually just brought something up, though. Before we move on from that, how is Mark Ruffalo a human?
I thought he learned how to control the Hulk.
I thought he fused together with Hulk and became Hulk Banner. Like, he was the Hulk with the personality of Bruce Banner. So when he shows up as the human, I was like, wait a minute, how is that possible? Because, right? He never turned back, right? At the end of Endgame, he was still the Hulk.
I don't remember. I want to say that you're wrong, because I want to believe that Marvel did not overlook such a massive plot issue. But I think that you might be right. I think that you might be right. But then again, I feel like every time we get an iteration of Mark Ruffalo in a Marvel film, he's always got a different relationship with the Hulk. So
yeah, he's kind of old. That is the most mess of a character. But
they can't make
we love
they
him.
can't make a good movie. He only makes a good side character, and they can't even keep the side character going straight, because, just for the record, we still never got our reunion and our closure for Hulk and Natasha Romanoff, which is something else entirely.
Womp womp. I know. You and me wanted that. We've talked about this. We liked it.
Oh, I shipped it so hard. I think they would have been great for each other.
Yeah. I know.
Whatever.
Yeah, I remember me and you, we had this vision of this like perfect scene in Infinity War where when they run into each other, all they had to do was just be alone in a room for 2 seconds. All they had to do was say Natasha, have her look at her and say, "I know. Not right now," or something. Like, but we got to do this something, and I'd be like, done. That's all we need to know.
Well, and then they plowed right over the emotional moment that the Hulk could have had when Clint comes back from Mount Vormir. We never got that moment for him, because it doesn't matter that they're not together anymore. They meant a lot to each other.
He threw a bench into a lake. Seemed pretty Hulk.
Okay, well, whatever.
I mean, there was that. That's what we got. That was our closure.
And speaking of armies that are out on the loose, we can't forget about Yelena. The Black Widow army's also out there now.
Oh my God! Yes, there's that too.
And so we've got like these two anti-hero characters going on the side. We've got, Shang-Chi's sister, and we've got Yelena, who is controlling the Black Widows. And Yelena's not going down a good path.
I think the next Avengers movie should just be called okay, so, and it's just literally just, okay, so, dot, dot, dot. And it's just a 3-hour movie, just keeping it all organized. There's no plot. It just shows what everyone's up to, and that's it. That's what it should be. You know, we'll all go see it. We'll pay our money.
Just make this make
That's
sense,
what-
Marvel.
Yeah. Just be like, all right, now I know you're probably confused. And it should be like a YouTube video, so it's just Kevin Feige. Like, all right, hold on, we got a whiteboard.
Oh
and
wait,
it's just
no,
him
we
drawing.
need Brian David Gilbert to come back just long enough so that way we can have him explain the Marvel universe to us and do an unraveled on the Marvel universe. That's what we need right now.
Yeah,
That's the hero we
if
all
anyone
need.
who's listening to this, yeah, if you don't know who Brian David Gilbert is, please look up that treasure of a human being. And like him and follow him on everything he does.
I know that he doesn't watch this at all because why would he watch us? But you know, we love you.
His fans might, maybe.
Maybe, please, if you're
Yeah.
listening, Brian David Gilbert, please come back, do one more Unraveled, and do the MCU, please.
Please. But speaking of people coming back and going back to theaters, we are the master of segues.
That was It's fine.
It got
It's fine.
It doesn't matter how you get there, all right?
It's all about the journey.
You can Uber, you can drive yourself. Just get there. You'll be a sweaty mess, but you're there. All right. So, Shang-Chi has brought in a 71.4 million domestic opening weekend. This was reported to us via IGN by Wesley LeBlanc. If any of you guys want to read the rest of the story, of course, you can go there. So is this a good haul-in? Well, yeah, it's pretty good. So it's slightly above Fast and the Furious 9's, which was 70 million on their opening haul. And then right below, quite a bit below actually, about 9 million below, Black Widow with an 80.3 million opening in the weekend debut. So what this movie is currently standing is pretty good opening. Now, honestly, this could go anywhere. So Black Widow is number one of those three, and Fast and the Furious 9 has destroyed it. You know, it is far above it when it comes to the worldwide. Also, you know, if you looked at the top 5, and I believe we went through this, I think we did this last week. I can never remember if this is just you and me talking on the side or if we recorded on the episodes anymore. But I know that we've gone through this before, and the top 5 grossing movies, you know, I don't even think Black Widow's even on there. You know, I know Fast and the Furious 9 is, and I know, like, the top 2, I think, were Chinese movies.
Oh, that's
that just
right. That was
made-
something I think we did on the
Yeah.
side. Yeah, I think we did that on the side where we realized that, like, Black Widow had done incredibly domestically, but as soon as you took it worldwide, it just kind of broke off. I'm kind of curious, though, where Shang-Chi falls in those Chinese and is Asian the right way to say that? Asian markets? I know Asian's not the... Okay.
Yeah. So as of right now, I don't see any information as to how this movie is doing worldwide. We just know the opening weekend. I don't know, because I gotta assume that this movie's probably going to appeal to the Asian markets, as you know, it has a primarily Asian cast. So I could definitely see this movie making a lot of money. I'm very interested in seeing where this movie sits when we come back to it.
Well,
They're
already at almost 140 million internationally. So
for this one, I would. And see, that's the thing: is do we have the numbers to compare that to, like Fast and Furious 9, Black Widow, and the other?
Remember
movies?
what site I went to? I mean, just have to look up international box office.
Why don't we come back to this
sorry.
later? You know, when we get a
Sorry.
little bit numbers. Yeah, we can come back to this later. But like, that's the currently open numbers, and that kind of brings us up a conversation of people are going back to theaters, not like they used to. Obviously, back when theaters were in full swing, this movie probably would have. I would assume you could easily double or maybe even triple that number for the first opening weekend.
All right.
Um,
Well, opening weekend, sorry, I finally found what I needed. So, opening
uh,
weekend worldwide, they're at 146, which is 18 internationally. So, they're still below Space Jam, Suicide Squad, Jungle Cruise, Cruella, Free Guy, Quiet Place, Black Widow, Godzilla versus Kong is still up there, and so is Fast and Furious 9. Um, but this is just opening weekend, and a lot of these films have been out longer, so we'll have to see how it does longevity wise.
I gotta assume this movie's going to
Oh, yeah.
skyrocket.
It's great.
Um,
It's a great
you know,
movie. And from what I have been able to find from people who are Chinese, is that it seems to be a respectful interpretation of Chinese people and their culture.
yeah.
Seems
So
to be
again,
not Chinese. So,
I'm gonna assume, yeah, I'm gonna assume this movie's gonna do absolutely great. I would love to see, because now we have the Eternals, which is gonna be coming out in November. I would love to see where these movies rank, being the fact that you had Black Widow, which is an established MCU character, and you have Scarlett Johansson, who very popular, probably the most well-known actor out of all of these films. You have this one, brand new character, with a guy who I'm familiar with from Kim's Convenience, but most people have never even heard of that
great
show.
show.
Great show, by the way. And then like after that, we have Eternals with Angelina Jolie as like one of its many characters, and trailers that I know you liked it. I personally think are questionable. And then we have, of course, another Spider-Man, which I gotta assume, even though Spider-Man's coming out in December, that movie's going to just
oh, that's
blow
gonna
up.
rake in money.
Um,
Even if it's
yeah,
bad, people are gonna be so excited to see it that they're gonna go, and that's gonna do just fine. And quite honestly, as um as critical as I'm being of the trailer, you're right. We don't know what's going to happen. And Marvel, as we've said repeatedly on the show, has a habit of taking things that you're not so sure about and turning them into things you love. So, and also every Spider-Man outing up to this point, and Tom Holland's run a Spider-Man, let me be clear,
yeah,
has
yeah.
been
Just those two.
fantastic. So I don't see why this one wouldn't be fantastic as well.
Yeah, I don't see it. I don't think any of these movies are probably going to be bad. I'm curious to know how Eternals is going to end up. Like, is Spider-Man 3 going to be a little bit of a mess, being the fact that they've pretty much already kind of opened the door that there's going to be a lot of other returning
Right.
Spider-Man characters in this movie? Is it going to be a little messy? Potentially.
I,
But Eternals is the one that because A, it's another cast of characters that the public has no knowledge of. I have no idea who these people are. And aside from Angelina Jolie, like there's a couple actors that I recognize, but kind of recognize, and it's a large cast. There's like what 9 of these people in there. This is like the Slipknot of MCU groups. So like I just this one I'm curious. I'm sure it's gonna be a fine movie. I'm sure it's gonna do well. I gotta assume that it has a lot going for it, and it might be a tough one to sell, especially being the fact that I'm sure there's going to be an audience out there that's going to say, oh, well, there's a new Spider-Man movie coming out, so instead of seeing this one, I'm just going to go see that one and save the money. Because, especially with the Eternals come out in November, and then obviously you're in the holiday area, and people are going to be spending money on gifts. Who knows where the world's going to be at that point. It's a lot going on.
Yeah, I think kind of as I'm thinking about these newer movies that are coming out for the new phase of the MCU, that it seems like there is more love and care going into the movies that they know they're going to have to sell people on. Like as much as I'm sure people are going to hate me for saying this, they did not have to work hard at Black Widow. They did not have to work hard at Captain Marvel because they knew people wanted those movies. I feel like they knew no matter what, even if they didn't have everything all punched in correctly, people were going to come out in droves to come see those movies because of the timing of the films. And when you bring in characters that nobody knows, like Shang-Chi and with the Eternals, you have to work that much harder to make people care. Nobody cared about Iron Man when they made the first Iron Man, which is why they had to work so hard to make it good. And I have this feeling that just I think that the movies that we're most skeptical about, the ones that we know the least about, might end up being the ones that we like the most.
Maybe. Who really knows? But we can add something because there was a little bit of news out this morning. Most likely due to the pretty much recurring success of these Marvel movies and Fast and Furious 9, of course, a couple others. We've had a movie out, a sequel, Venom 2, got its fifth and hopefully final date movement of Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage, is now scheduled for October 1st, which it is going to be theaters only. So for those of you who have been watching and waiting for this one, now you're getting it 2 weeks sooner, and hopefully you don't ever have to see that image of Venom's face again with the word delayed anymore. And hopefully the movie is to your likings. I never saw the first one. I had no interest in it. But Kayla, I know you're excited for it. Do you have anything you want to say?
I can't believe you didn't see the first one. The first one was really good. I didn't care about Venom. I didn't want to see the first Venom. I went with my best friend because he was obsessed and wanted to see Venom. And it was really good. It's a really good piece of cinema. Like, it's very interesting. And I'm really excited for Carnage. Woody Harrelson is in it. I saw the trailer before Shang-Chi, and now it's all gone from my head. All I know is that there was this really funny line where Tom Hardy's Venom, who is black in color, is kind of going up against Woody Harrelson's Venom, who is red. And he goes, "That's a red one. Nuh-uh, I'm not fighting that. That's a red one. That's a red one. I don't do that." And it's got that same kind of dark and clippy humor to it, but it looks like it's going to be so good. I am so excited. I love the first Venom. You need to watch the first Venom and then go see the second Venom, and then you'll understand why we're excited.
You already want me to spend $20
I don't want to
on
get
the
started
Green
on the
Knight.
Green Knight right now. I'm very upset about it. It was a very good movie, except for the ending.
Do you want to give a quick review on that? We got plenty of time.
The Green Knight, which I was very excited for, people, because I was an English major, and one of my favorite Arthurian stories was Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. And the whole point is that he goes on a hero's journey, and it literally is a hero's journey to the point where it's a year and 1 day. He's given a year and 1 day to fulfill his promise, because a Green Knight, who is literally dressed in green in the story, comes to Arthur's table, and he says, "You all get a free hit on me. Hit me wherever you want. But in a year and a day, you have to come meet me at my green chapel," which is like 6 nights north or whatever west. "And whatever you give to me, I'm going to give back to you." And Gawain is like, "I got this, guys. I got this." And he chops his head off. But magic. So the Green Knight picks up his head, a year goes by, and this is all about Gawain's journey to becoming a good knight. Because he's young, he's inexperienced, he doesn't know what chivalry is, he doesn't understand all the rules yet. And you get this really nice, in-depth story, which they were doing pretty well. And the way they chose to end it was just trash, because they cut the end. They just did it wrong. They did it wrong, and there's a point that, like, the author wrote it that way. I don't care that the author's anonymous. They're rolling over in their grave because you didn't finish it right. Like, it's not a... They made some changes, so the Green Knight's not like a human being. He's like this weird foresty creature, which is why he's the Green Knight. And he's like summoned by Wiccans, which sort of has to do with the original way that this all works. But yeah, the ending is, I'm going to do what we talked about doing before this. I'm going to give you 2 endings. There's one ending where Gawain sees his future, and he sees what would happen if he runs away from facing this challenge of having his head lopped off by this fantastical knight, and he chooses to stay, and we don't know what happens next. We don't know where we go from here. And there is another ending where he sees his future, and he sees what would happen if he ran away from his duty and his obligation and his promise that he made. He chooses to stay, and instead of lopping off his head, the knight only nicks the back of his neck, and he goes home. He was not chivalrous the entire time he was gone, and he essentially tells the knights, look, I wasn't a good knight. I made a mistake. And they all acknowledge this and tell him that he is a good person for acknowledging that and growing past that, and he wears a symbol as a reminder of that impurity, of the fact that he's not a perfect person for the rest of his life. Those are the two endings that you have an option for.
Sound really lame, gonna be honest. I'm gonna assume, since you gave a lot more into the second one, that that's probably how the novel, the original, ends. And I would assume the first one is probably more the film, because that kind of sounds like something a film would do.
I hate I hate.
Am I right?
There's a time and a place for an ambiguous ending, and this was not the time and the place for it. Like, that's just not the purpose of the story. Like, that's not the purpose of the story. It's clearly trying to teach you a lesson. You're not a perfect person, and you can still be a good person. Ah!
So the movie ends. Ends ambiguously. Well, thank you for telling me the ending of a movie I was probably never going to watch.
So you get a last shot of Dev Patel's face and the knight with the axe over his head, and you see the axe come up and come down, and then it just goes black. And so you're left wondering, like, did he chop his head off? Did he decide to only nick his neck and send him home? Like, not the time or the place, people. That being said, it's a very pretty movie. And when I told my boyfriend about what the ending of the movie was supposed to be, he basically told me, hey, look, I liked it, but then you told me what the ending was supposed to be, and then I really didn't like the ending and thought it was lame. So I'll leave that for the masses to decide, I guess. But yeah, it was my favorite story, so I was really looking forward to it, and I was really enjoying it up until literally the fade to black, the cut to black ending. Why would you do that? I hate there are endings that are meant to be ambiguous, and there are endings that are not, and this just felt like such a cop-out.
I feel like we got enough time to do this. So you don't like ambiguous endings.
I just crushed my can. I hate it. It's empty.
How would you feel about Inception? The most popular
that was
ambiguous ending of all
good.
time.
That was a good ambiguous ending. Because, there's a whole question throughout the whole movie of, is this reality or is this not? And at the end, do you know? You don't, and neither does he. There's a purpose behind that. There was no purpose behind this.
So I guess, what do you feel like the big difference is being like? Why do you think the director chose to do that? Do you think the director felt like kind of like the same situation with Inception, where I know Christopher Nolan said, the story doesn't matter whether or not he's in a dream or not. It's the fact that he finally faced his children, and that's why he ended it there. Like, that was Christopher Nolan's opinion. Why do you feel like the director for Green Knight chose to change the ending?
Yeah, okay, so I'm really glad that you said that. I actually pulled this up before we started the podcast to look at what they had said about this ending and what the director had actually said. And David Lowery, who was the director, said, that's a happy ending. He faces his fate bravely, and there's honor and integrity in that. But that doesn't mean that he's dead. He's killed. He received the blow that he was dealt, and all is set right within the universe of the film. Apparently, there was also a cut of the film with a more definitive ending, but David decided to leave it more ambiguous since, and quote, if people were to watch a movie in which Dev Patel gets beheaded at the end, they probably would like to leave the theater feeling differently than they do with a more ambiguous version. So David Lowery just doesn't seem to care what the ending is supposed to be. He just wanted to change it and make it an entirely different story. And that's my issue with film adaptations, is that you need to keep the heart and the soul of what the story is trying to do. He can't finish his hero's journey if he doesn't have the opportunity to kind of like be reborn, like die and be reborn. So you're cutting off the hero's journey before it ends. And the way that he's trying to tell the story, which is apparently Dev Patel getting beheaded, which makes no sense, again, because if you know the story, it's a perfect hero's journey. Like, he needs to go home. Leave home, come back home after you finished your journey. And beheading him makes sense in the world that we understand it now, but in the morality of the story, it makes no sense.
So would you recommend it to somebody who's has no idea what the story is before? Because I'm a basic human being, never heard of this story. I've only seen trailers of this movie.
If you like artsy movies and you know nothing about Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, go watch it. You'll have a great time. If you have read the story, you might hate it as much as I do. Or maybe I'm crazy and I'm alone again. Who knows? I don't.
I don't know. Last week you did give some strong opinions on Angelina Jolie, and I think you're alone on that one as well.
I'm not. I talked to real human beings, and I asked them if I was alone, and they literally said she looked like an alien. I will not name names, but no, right. I swear to God.
Yeah, please. I don't need an army of people defending Angelina Jolie coming after us. All right, that's all you. You're on your own on this one. I'll trash talk movies all I want. Lord of the Rings is the most boring thing in the world. I will argue that, but I don't want the Angelina Jolie army coming after us. Did you see the people who were defending Johnny Depp from last week? like, granted, they were with us. Thank you. But the armies are out there.
And actually, while we have just a little bit of time left to talk about that, I would just like to point out that on this episode, I have provided links to be put up for the ACLU for Shriners Children's Hospital, where Amber Heard was supposed to donate, as well as link to an article with resources and numbers on domestic abuse and how to get help if you need it. So please, if you need help, get help. We're providing the resources. If you have money to donate to these things, to these people who need help, please do that. Like, this is not just in the hands of one person. We can all do our best to help out.
Yes, by all means, if you're interested, we're going to have the links in this video. You'll be, of course, down below. And just like I said last week, and like I'll say every week going forward, if you feel like you can do podcasts better than us, we use Buzzsprout to get all of our podcasts out. And if you would like to start up your own and also have the conversation on your review of Shang-Chi and MCU, or just you want to dive into the drama of the Green Knight's ending, you can click the link down below and you could get your own podcast, of course, started. Other than that, this has been your episode of N.E.R.D. Film and TV for this week. I know I say week, it's bi-weekly. I think we all understand what I'm talking about. If you like what we're talking about, you want to follow us, of course, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram right below me and under Kayla. As you can see, there's little signs for Spotify and iTunes. You can subscribe to us there. Leave a comment. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Leave a comment here as well. Tell your friends about it. Do everything you want to do. Other than that, thank you for listening, and nerd out.